60. From what Susan could tell, Randy actually had changed for the better since his hospital stay, though admittedly her chances to observe him had been limited. He'd be returning to work on January 3rd, 2 days before his classes began, so he'd mostly spent his time driving back and forth to Jefferson Community College, requesting papers and filling out forms, registering for classes, and hunting teachers down in their offices to prove himself deserving of late registration. But when Randy was home, he moved through the house with a purpose, and his presence felt restless, albeit sometimes frantic, rather than angry. Randy had arrived home from the hospital with 2 bottles of pills, each of which he took first thing every morning. Susan had checked the labels, but she didn't recognize the names, and despite his relative cheerfulness, she couldn't bring herself to ask him what exactly they did. She did wonder, however, just how much of his transformation they had affected. Were they revealing the person he really was, or were they disguising it? Regardless, Randy wasn't so very different from how he had been. It wasn't as though he had started paying more attention to the kids or helping Susan out around the house. But he was consistently civil and reasonable and calm, more calm than she could ever remember him being before. It was as though someone had charted the whole range of Randy's vacillations, chopped off the lows, and left the highs just as small and rare as they'd always been. He still didn't want Susan to work. "You've had to take on way too much as it is," he'd told her in an affected display of concern. "Let me take that off your plate." Susan didn't want to quit, but she didn't say so out loud. Somehow, Randy's return had transformed her into a spectator rather than a participant. She felt oddly powerless, as if her only choice was to watch him and see what he would do. The day Willa almost lost her finger, Randy had asked Susan if she'd put in her notice, and for the first time, maybe ever, she had flat out lied to him. Yes, she said, she'd talked to Jeff, which she hadn't, and he'd begged her to stay on through the holidays. "So after the new year," he said, "you're done." Maybe he'd intended it as a question, but his intonation was one of a command. "I believe that's what he meant," Susan said,